If you're new to candle making, you're bound to make some mistakes if you're not already making them. And trust me when I say that they cost a lot of time and money. From my experience over the past 4 years of candle making, I have a list of mistakes that you're most likely making as a beginner and how you can avoid them to hopefully save you some time and money. To everyone that's new here, I am the owner of Serene Aromas, where I make aromatherapy candles and skincare for dry and sensitive skin. So let's get right into this video. I'm breaking these into 3 major categories for you. To begin, we have the temperatures. One of the very first things you need to focus on when you're making your candles is the temperature that you melt your wax to. When you order your candle wax, they're gonna tell you the best temperature for you to melt your wax to so that you don't experience a lot of things like the wax crumbling top, the sinkholes, the bad fragrance, the discoloration, and so on. Now, if you melt your wax at a temperature that is too high, you'll notice that the wax changes colors. This is basically what happens when the wax is burning. You'll see that the wax either turns yellow or a little light brown color. So what I recommend for you to avoid this is to melt the wax at the temperature that your company recommends to melt the wax to. What they typically do is have some information for you when you're buying the wax, where it has all the information about the wax itself, the temperatures, the toxins, and all the things that come with using wax. So make sure you follow those. Then we also have the pouring temperature of the wax. If you're experiencing things like a crumble top or uneven burns, that's because you're pouring your wax a little bit too soon or too late when you're making your candles. If you pour your wax at a higher temperature and the wax has to cool down really fast, you're gonna notice that it has crumble top. If you pour your wax at a temperature that's a little bit too low, you'll notice crumble tops as well. So you have to find the perfect balance. Then we have the wicks. A common mistake that comes with candle making is choosing the wrong wick size, making a bunch of candles and sending them out to customers. What I don't want you to do is that. I want you to remember that with each and every single wig that you purchase, whether it is hemp, cotton, or wood, they burn differently in each and every single wax. So you have to test them out. This is gonna end up saving you a lot of time and money, because if you make a whole batch of candles that burn really poorly, you're essentially wasting your money and of course your time. For instance, if you have a wig that is too big for your candles, you'll notice that the flames are too high, the scent might burn off, and it's also a fire hazard for your customers. Not only that, when you're using the wrong wick size, you may also notice that your candle's burning time is lower because the wax is burning way faster than it needs to. So if you're making a candle that requires 3 wicks, I definitely recommend testing that out first before you make a big batch of those candles. And in comparison to that, if you have wicks that are too small for the candles, you'll notice that the candles are either tunneling or have an uneven burn. Tunneling is when the candle burns straight down the middle. So if you're making your candles for the first time, I definitely recommend testing those wicks out using this method for you right here, where I basically just pour a bunch of wax into an old baking pan using all the wicks that I want to try for my candles. This is going to give you an estimate of how big of a wax pool the candle wick creates for the candle that you're making. After doing that, you'll be able to use that as a reference for the size of the jar that you should be using for the flame of the candles. Another mistake to avoid when you're making your candles when it comes to the wicks is making sure that they're centered, because if they're not centered, not only will that cause an uneven burn, it's also not really appealing to the human eye. Then last, when it comes to the wicks, is making sure that each and every single wick is secured to the bottom of the candle jar, because if those wicks are not secured to the bottom of the jars using some type of wax or wick tabs, they are going to move when you pour the wax into the jar, which is going to make more work for you and could potentially lead to bad and uneven burns because your wicks will not be centered after you move them. And once your customers start burning their candles, once they reach that bottom layer, they will also notice that the candle is not burning properly. So make sure those wicks are secured to the bottom of the jars. Make sure they're centered. Make sure they're not too big or too small, so the burning process is even and each wick creates an even melt pool. And last on the list is the cooling and setting period for your candles. So after you pour your candles, they have to definitely cool down before you can actually use your candles. What a lot of people don't know is that the cooling period, if it is too fast or if it's done in the wrong temperature, say the room that you're in is cold, then your candle will have crumble tops, sinkholes, and uneven surfaces, which means more work for you because you're gonna have to use a heat gun to melt that layer once again. And on top of that, when you rush the cooling period, you may also notice some wet spots. This is basically the candle wax shrinking away from the candle jar. So for you to avoid this, make sure your candles are cooling in a room temperature where it is not too cold and there are no drafts in the area, meaning a fan, the AC, or people coming in and out of the room. And then we have the setting period. What this is basically when you let your candles sit without burning them for a certain amount of time. For soy wax candles, this is up to 2 weeks, and it really does help your candles smell better because the fragrance is fully immersing with the wax over that 2-week time frame. If you skip this part and you burn your candle the day after you make it, you may notice that the scent is not that great. So it is best for you to just wait those 2 weeks and be patient so that your candles smell even better when you burn it. And some bonus tips for you guys that made it this far into this video: when you're making your candles, make sure you stir the fragrance in with the wax for at least 2 minutes so that they can smell better. And don't forget to clean those containers with some rubbing alcohol and a microfiber towel. And if you ever made any of these mistakes, don't worry, because I've made them in my candle making journey and learned from them so that I can share with you. And trust me when I say all of us candle makers have made these mistakes, so no shame there. If you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more candle making tips. Until next time.